the
Monsieur
Republic of
Akanje Otilema,
Zambia.
président
And
de
I'd
la
like to apologize
République.
for my earlier faux pas. In that regard, your country is one that I absolutely love visiting, and once again I say Mulishani.
Absolument visiter et encore une fois Mulishani. L'Afrique est le seul continent qui n'a pas véritablement fait l'expérience d'une révolution verte. Votre pays est richement doté et donc je serais curieux de savoir ce que vous faites, ce que fait votre gouvernement pour atteindre l'objectif de fin zéro. Merci beaucoup. Je voudrais commencer par remercier notre hôte, le président Macky Sall et son équipe, ainsi que mes collègues, les panélistes ici, et les excellences et distingués délégués ici présents. Je pense que la question est
around the way we have defined agriculture. We've been defining agriculture in a narrow sense. So I think the first thing to do is to broaden the definition of agriculture, food, security, feeding ourselves, because a dry definition does not address certain key components that will allow us to achieve a green revolution. So the first thing we have done as a country is to recognize that agriculture is a key sector in our economic transformation agenda. Very important. And in doing that, we're drifting away from the narrow definition of fertilizer, of seed, of extension services to mean agriculture. No. So we're putting a program called the Comprehensive Agricultural Support Program as a country. And that, by implication, means infrastructure to support agriculture, road, rail, but also energy infrastructure, green energy, very important, water to irrigate, and small, medium, large irrigation alike. Also, to be able to look at food production from the farm, raw material, into processors, value addition, and then to see a country that will move into a situation where we're a center of production, processing, which is what value addition, and distribution. Distribution within our domestic demand requirements, distribution into the region, and obviously Africa as our first priority, and contribute towards a global food basket, as it were. So I think that's a very, very important issue to us. And to do that, we're looking at also genetics, technology. Genetics, I just want to acknowledge what ADB has done with Ethiopia with regard to resilience in terms of the seed. So appropriate technology, appropriate genetics are very important to us in the crop side, on the animal husbandry side, beef for us, and for me this is a place I was born into. You can say I was born in a cattle crop. So it is very important to have the genetics right because of the yields around there. That can be extremely important to help feed Africa. So it also goes to issues of logistics, issues of moving crop or moving food from surplus areas into our deficit areas. I think it's not just for Zambia, it's for the region, it's for Africa, because we do have, for example, self-sufficiency in maize, it's just as an example. But countries just not far from us need the maize, but we cannot deliver the maize at a commercially profitable level because of logistics challenges. So as a continent, we have to deal with those issues of investments as well around there. And that's it. I think it's very important. But also we are bringing in the private sector as critical to our agenda towards the green revolution for the country, for the region, and Africa. And here today in our delegation, we have wheat farmers. 3 wheat farmers are amidst us who have come with us as the Zambia delegation. And I think that is important for us as governments to bring in the private sector, to spend public money on the private sector as well, because they're integral to our Feeding Africa agenda. Finally, I can say many things, but it really is not necessary. As a country, we are clear areas where we are sufficient in food, but we want to include that in wheat, we want to include that beef. We have the competitive advantage within the climate change challenges, Zambia still has the hydrology, still has the soils, agronomical conditions, still has really the expansive land that is available that should be put into production. But in addition, no need to open new areas when we are underutilizing the existing land for agriculture. So productivity is very important to us here. Small scalers are still very low in productivity. We want to support them to increase the productivity. For the same hectareage, same fertilizer, and same other services or inputs. Very, very important to look at it for us as a country. Finally, just to indicate that it's shameful for us to be hungry as Africa. We must accept that. We must accept that. Political leaders, us here, our farmers, our business people, we must wash away this shame. We must wash away this shame to our children, to our widows, and the like. It's very, very important. Finally, food security is key for political stability. Food security is key for political stability. Very important for enhancing democracy. When people have eaten, they think better. They make better choices. And ultimately, food security is important for economic and social development. So there is a vicious cycle which we must accept: jobs, business opportunities, and indeed social equity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, President Hichilema. You've given us much food for thought. You've encapsulated quite a bit in there, broadening the definition of food security, a holistic and multifaceted approach to agriculture and a strategy, value addition, technologies including genetics, logistics and infrastructure enabled value chains, private sector engagement, and again, the command to wash away the shame of Africa's food dependency. Absolutely. And food security is equal to political security. Thank you very much. Up next will be His Excellency President William Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya. Just like Zambia, just like Zimbabwe, just like Nigeria, and all of the other presidents who have spoken prior to now, your nation is abundant in resources. Now, the food and agriculture business is a multi-billion global enterprise, actually a multi-trillion-dollar enterprise. So my question to you is, what type of partners are you interested in to ensure that your country and Africa achieve food security and zero hunger by 2030, and in the process create wealth for the people of Kenya?
Thank you very much. First, let me extend my gratitude to our host, President Macky Sall, and appreciate his stewardship in putting together this conversation about Africa, food, and the future. Let me maybe contextualize where Kenya is in addressing myself to two issues, two different crops. On one hand, we have tea. On the other, we have horticulture. Just to give you some numbers, tea, we have close to 650,000, 700,000 farmers. In horticulture, we have about 50,000 farmers. We generate $1 billion from tea, maybe $1.2 billion. We generate another $1 billion from horticulture. You can clearly see that for 10% of the land we do our tea, we earn the same from horticulture. And the difference is in 5 areas that informs the trajectory of Kenya's investment in agriculture. For our tea, among the best crops we have, giving us good returns. the challenge is for the 1.7 million acres, we are getting the same amount of income as 10% that we have in horticulture. The difference is that, number one, seeds and fertilizer make a whole difference. Our seed investment, fertilizer investment in horticulture is higher than our tea, and the difference is as day as night. Number two is mechanization. There is mechanization in our horticulture, from irrigation through processing, and that is why we have 10 times higher returns in our horticulture. Number three is there are more young people in our horticulture than there are in our tea industry. The participation of young people is as significant as you can see from the returns we get from our two sectors. The more young people are in a sector, the greater the returns we get from that sector. Number three is the participation of the private sector. We have a greater participation of the private sector in our horticulture sector than we do in our tea sector. Again, the returns are tenfold. And finally, is technology. The greater the participation of technology, the greater the infusion of technology, the better the returns for our agricultural sector. So what is Kenya doing? Number one, we are expanding our fertilizer input. This year, we have 600,000 metric tons made available to farmers, and it is so clear to us as government that the application of fertilizer, the amount is directly proportional to the output of our agricultural sector. There is no magic, there is no miracle. It's just if you have sufficient fertilizer in the correct quantities, in the correct prescription, you get the outcome. Number two, we are increasing our farming under irrigation from 650,000 acres to 3 million acres in the next 5 years. And we have roped in the private sector to provide construction of dams. We are building 100 mega dams in Kenya and 1,000 micro dams to support our irrigation potential and production. And number three, mechanization. We are increasing our mechanization potential from 40% to 75% in the next 5 years. Again, we have an ecosystem that will bring the private sector into the mechanization of our agriculture, again, so that we can progressively walk away, because there is a reason why smallholder agriculture is predominant in our continent. It is simply because of mechanization. You do not, the extent to which a farmer can do their land is limited to the kind of mechanization and technology they have. And therefore, mechanization becomes a big component of productivity and production. And finally, we will be doing our agricultural extension service, supply of subsidized fertilizer on an e-voucher system that is supported by technology. Again, to eliminate pilferage, corruption, and to enhance efficiency. That, in our opinion, is the way into the future. In conclusion, let me say that the fact that we are having a conversation,
le fait d'avoir une telle concertation en tant que chef d'État sur notre continent et que nous ayons
is not a very interesting thing to do. I think we should be discussing beyond food 60 years after independence. We should be discussing about how agriculture is not just going to feed, but it's going to create jobs, it's going to create revenue, it's going to add value, we're going to do export, and that is really the trajectory that the people of this continent expect us as heads of state to have a conversation about. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Ruto. Mind-boggling numbers there, $1 billion from tea and $1 billion in horticulture. Recurring themes, the trajectory and transformation in your country being driven by fertilizers, mechanization, technology in the hands of dynamic youth, private sector engagement, and your investment in dams. I love what you said here, Africa beyond food. The presence of your excellencies here today is evidence that we're headed in that direction, and very, very fast too. Thank you very much once again, Your Excellency. I'm going to go next to His Excellency Tiomoko Milie Kone, the Vice President of the Republic of Côte d'Ivoire, for our next question. My observation is that in 2021 and 2022, during the cocoa season, approximately 5 million tons of cocoa was produced worldwide. Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana alone accounted for over 60% of global cocoa production. My grandfather was a cocoa farmer, so this question is personal to me. Yet, Africa only controls a small fraction of the chocolate and cocoa value-added market. What should we be doing to reverse this almost 100-year-old trend? Your Excellency, over to you.
Merci beaucoup pour cette question. Mais avant de répondre, je voudrais que vous me permettiez de saluer et de remercier le président Macky Sall ainsi que le président de la Banque mondiale et transmettre aussi au président Macky Sall ainsi qu'à tous ses pairs qui sont ici présents à ce sommet les fraternelles salutations du président Ouattara, président de la République de Côte d'Ivoire, qui m'a demandé de le représenter à cette session. Et pour revenir à votre question, je suis tout à fait d'accord avec vous, c'est vrai, que ce soit pour le cacao d'ailleurs que vous connaissez ou pour d'autres produits, il est évident que ceux qui produisent la plus grande quantité de la chaîne de production ne sont pas ceux-là qui peut-être engrangent le plus de profit. Cela est dû tout simplement à ce que si vous n'êtes pas dans la chaîne du début jusqu'à la fin, vous ne pouvez pas espérer tirer tous les profits qu'il y a à chaque stade. Et c'est ce qu'on a constaté dès le départ, parce que les pays qui sont producteurs, c'est pour d'autres produits d'ailleurs, ce n'est pas seulement pour le cacao, ont privilégié dès le départ la production et la commercialisation. C'est vrai que cela a permis d'avoir quelques ressources et de rémunérer peut-être les producteurs. Mais c'est vrai, ce que vous dites est important, ce n'est pas suffisant. Il faut être dans la chaîne, dans la chaîne du début jusqu'à la fin pour pouvoir profiter au maximum de tout ce que cela peut créer comme valeur. Et je crois que c'est ce qu'en Côte d'Ivoire nous avons compris. Et à partir d'un certain moment, depuis quelques années, nous avons fixé un objectif de transformation. Comme le président Macky Sall l'a dit tout à l'heure, pour être présent dans la chaîne du début jusqu'à la fin, il faut conserver, il faut transformer en produits tels que nous le voyons dans le processus normal. Alors, l'objectif qui a été fixé, c'est de faire de telle sorte que au moins 50% de la production soit transformée localement par justement des entreprises qui sont installées sur place. Et c'est ça qui permettra justement de profiter au maximum de la chaîne de valeur en la matière. Je dois dire que les résultats sont très encourageants parce que peut-être actuellement nous devons être entre 27 et 30%, mais cet objectif va être très rapidement atteint parce qu'il y a eu des incitations qui ont été lancées et qui permettent justement à beaucoup de personnes dans le secteur de pouvoir participer à la chaîne. Et nous pensons que les 50% vont être très rapidement atteints et même dépassés. C'est ce qui est souhaitable. Et c'est ça qui permettra justement de faire de telle sorte que ceux qui produisent aillent jusqu'au bout de la chaîne et tirent le maximum de ce qu'ils peuvent avoir. Alors, je voulais dire tout simplement que nous avons vu tout à l'heure une image ici de jeunes et de femmes qui transforment les produits primaires en produits consommables et consommés sur place. C'est une image qui doit nous rendre fiers de l'Afrique. Et c'est d'ailleurs cette image et d'une façon générale cette approche qui a fait que le président de la République de Côte d'Ivoire a déclaré l'année 2023 comme l'année de la jeunesse, pour que justement ces jeunes aillent dans ce processus de transformation des produits locaux pour ajouter de la valeur et pour que ces producteurs en profitent le maximum possible. Voilà ce que je peux répondre. Pour aller dans la chaîne, il faut être dans la chaîne du début jusqu'à la fin. Et c'est ça qui donne les résultats. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Vice President Kone. You've said it all there, increased engagement in the whole value chain, production, processing, marketing, and branding. But don't take Vice President Kone's word for it. Recently, I was in Côte d'Ivoire, and I was given a box of chocolates. And I'm going to tell you, it was the best chocolate I've ever eaten in my life. It was tasty, it was just great chocolate, plus it was branded very, very well. And I was curious, where in the world is this being produced? Got to find out. It is in Côte d'Ivoire. So it is possible. We can add value and we can be engaged completely in the whole value chain of agriculture. My last question goes to His Excellency Uhumadu Mahamadou, Prime Minister of the Republic of Niger. Now, the world is faced with, as we know, chronic food shortages. Your country has an initiative called 3N, Nigerians Nourish Nigerians. What is 3N all about? Just very briefly, I've just gotten a note that we need to wrap up shortly, but Excellency, the question is yours because there might be a few questions to follow.
Merci. Merci beaucoup. Je voudrais avant tout transmettre les salutations du président Mohamed Bazoum à son Excellence Macky Sall et à l'ensemble de ses collègues et lui dire combien, bien qu'il ne soit pas présent ici, il partage l'ensemble des réflexions et des résolutions qui sortiront de cette rencontre. Pour répondre à votre question, je voudrais d'abord vous dire qu'en termes contextuels, le Niger est un pays qui n'est pas favorisé pour le plan agricole. En effet, c'est un pays semi-désertique où l'agriculture n'est possible que sur un tiers du pays. Malgré cela, le Niger a mis en place effectivement un programme de politique agricole qu'on appelle l'initiative 3N. Les Nigériens nourrissent les Nigériens. Ce programme consiste à adapter notre agriculture à notre contexte et à accroître la production agricole de façon à ce que le pays puisse être autosuffisant. Nous avons notre agriculture basée essentiellement sur l'eau de pluie et la pluie est saisonnière, elle ne tombe qu'entre juin et septembre. Ce qui veut dire que le reste de l'année, l'agriculture, théoriquement, n'est pas possible. Mais le Niger cultive ce paradoxe qu'il a dans son sous-sol d'énormes quantités d'eau. C'est l'un des pays qui dispose des plus grandes réserves d'eau, j'allais dire, du monde, à des profondeurs variables allant de 1 mètre jusqu'à 1000 mètres et plus de profondeur. Donc, notre politique agricole, l'initiative 3N, est axée d'abord sur l'augmentation de la production. En ce qui concerne la production en saison de pluie, il s'agit d'augmenter les rendements par l'utilisation des meilleurs intrants, la mécanisation de l'agriculture. En ce qui concerne la production hors saison de pluie, nous encourageons les producteurs à capter l'eau à partir des forages et des puits. Et ceci nous permet de produire en saison, hors saison de pluie, le complément nécessaire au déficit de production de la saison de pluie. C'est ainsi que la production hors saison de pluie a passé d'environ 100 000 tonnes, équivalent céréalier, à 800 000 tonnes actuellement, et nous envisageons de passer très rapidement à 1 million de tonnes en saison hors pluie. Pour cela, donc, nous réalisons des barrages et des seuils d'épandage là où cela est possible sur les cours d'eau temporaires. Et nous réalisons des forages de faible profondeur là où la profondeur n'est pas assez importante, et même des forages à grande profondeur, dans la mesure où plus le forage est profond, plus vous arrivez à des nappes d'eau fossiles de très grande capacité, capables de vous donner des débits jusqu'à 100 000 m3/h. Et avec ces débits, nous avons la possibilité donc d'arroser de grandes surfaces pour l'agriculture, mais aussi pour l'élevage. Voilà un peu donc en quoi consiste le programme 3N, les Nigériens nourrissent les Nigériens. Et nous avons l'espoir que très bientôt, avec le compact que nous allons présenter récemment, tout à l'heure, nous allons donc pouvoir contribuer à nourrir l'Afrique, pas seulement nourrir les Nigériens. Merci.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, the Prime Minister of the Republic of Niger, Umaru Mahamadou. Thank you very much for again intimating us with the advances that you're making in food self-sufficiency through improved access to water reserves and by circumventing seasonal water deficits. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, I'd like to thank you because this brings us to the close of what really has been a superb presidential presentation and Q&A session with our Excellencies. Would you kindly give them a warm round of applause? As we thank our Excellencies here for placing the Feed Africa agenda at the very top of your respective development agendas, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to acknowledge their very strong political support as well as their visionary leadership as entailed in the presentations that we have just heard. Once again, I really believe that that deserves another warm round of applause for our Excellencies who have come here for this summit. We're now going to formally close this segment of the opening ceremony, and allow our presidents to leave the stage and head on to the Food and Agriculture Delivery Compact boardrooms, which our presidents, as CEOs of their nations, will be chairing. We will be joined by 10 more African presidents for another high-level presidential panel later in the afternoon, after the boardroom sessions and lunch break. In closing, As the saying goes, music is food to the heart, and food is music to the body. On behalf of my co-moderator, Aram Ndel, and I, we wish you, therefore, bon appetit. Thank you very much.
You can even walk. But you find out the ballroom will not have many people because they restrict the people to each ballroom. So most people are going for the day. Unless tomorrow back when they are plenary session.
I don't know ballroom will be.
Yeah, but